in the cage, that toxin bell that should be ringing and warning all of us that when they finish with them, they're going to come through the door for us. So I believe that while hate crimes legislation is important, while efforts to challenge the use of airwaves to funnel messages of hatred and violence is something that should be campaigned against within the society, finally, we will only break this movement by reaching out, as we did in the 1930s, to millions of Americans who were dispossessed and bringing them back into our society. That, of course, is the great gift of the New Deal. It saved us from American corporatism, which, of course, corporatism is a term that comes from Mussolini's fascist state. It's why Fortune magazine in 1934 put Mussolini on its cover and praised him for the empowerment of Italian industrialists at the expense of Italian workers, and it's why there was a huge flirtation in the 1930s with fascism by American conservatives and American corporate interests. And of course, what we have seen, and Robert O. Paxton writes about this in his book, Anatomy of Fascism. He says there is no such thing as a purely fascist movement, unlike communism. Fascists always make uneasy alliances with conservative or corporate interests. And that's precisely what the Christian right has done. It's why Tyson Foods or Devores or many of these groups that have been gathered together by people like Tim LaHaye are so willing to fund this movement. Because if you remove people from a reality-based world, it's so much easier to rape them and take away absolutely everything they have in their life that can protect them. Because, of course, what's held up in front of them is this mirage that God is going to save them. And I think that that alliance has now gone extremely far and become extremely effective and a very potent and dangerous political force in American society. Finally, let me conclude by saying that none of these movements can come to power unless there is a prolonged period of instability or crisis. And we're not in a period of crisis now. But should we suffer another catastrophic terrorist attack, should we have an economic meltdown, should we suffer a series of environmental disasters, then I think these groups stand poised to manipulate our fear, promise us security, safety, and protection, of course, if we will turn over their rights, and move to reshape American society in ways that have probably not been seen since our nation's founding. Thank you very much. He's asking how can these groups deal with or counter Jesus' message about the poor, about rendering unto Caesar the things that are Caesar, Jesus constantly inveighed against violence, the use of violence. I think that one of the things that gives me a kind of window into the movement is, because I know the Bible so well, I'm a little more attuned to how they distort it. And when you watch how they distort it, and what parts of the Bible they pick out and what parts they ignore, because there are certainly hateful messages in the Bible. There are passages in the Hebrew Bible where God appears to countenance, even bless genocide. The Gospel of John has, anti-Semitic statements in it. Paul denounces homosexuality, also promotes slavery as an institution. But it's what they ignore and what they pick out that exposes who they are. And that gross misuse of the Bible is such, and I'm just going to give a little example to show that in a minute. That gross misuse is a huge tip-off as to what it is they're trying to promote. When you know the Bible and you know how they edit it to fit their ideology. I mean, they often talk about acculturating America to the Christian religion, but in fact, of course, the opposite has happened. They have acculturated the Christian religion with the worst of American imperialism and American capitalism. And that distortion of the Bible, for me, essentially means they're heretics. I look at them as heretics. It is just absolutely inconceivable that one can read through the Greek Bible and believe that God wants us all to have huge cars and Learjets and lots of money. It's absolutely inconceivable. And so they present themselves as literalists, but of course they're not literalists. They're selective literalists. Do they believe, as it says in the Hebrew Bible, that the vault of night sky above us and on all the little lights are peepholes with God looking down on us? I mean, there's so much stuff in the Bible that is so fantastic that they discard. And there are so many passages like the Sermon on the Mount that they have no use for, that it becomes very clear that they're about something else. I attended a creation seminar run by these ideologues to teach teachers in Christian schools how to teach about creation. And I think it's in the details that the irrationality of their belief system becomes apparent. Because, of course, what happens in Genesis is that God creates light on the first day and the sun on the fourth day. And so how the instructor was having to deal with this tricky question of what that meant. And he said, well, God created a temporary light. Well, there's nothing in Genesis that even hints that God created a temporary light. If everything was created in 6 days, and I went to the Creation Museum in Peterborough, Kentucky, this $25 million museum, where they have a replication of the Garden of Eden with dinosaurs. Because dinosaurs were in the garden, you could put saddles on them and ride them and stuff like this. And questions like, how did Noah get the dinosaurs on the ark? Well, Noah got them on the ark because they were baby dinosaurs on the ark. And why is it that T-Rex, because the dinosaurs and man, before the fall, dinosaurs were just plant eaters because everything was peaceful, but why did T-Rex have such big teeth if he just ate plants? Well, he had big teeth because he would crack open the coconuts with the teeth.
So just a quick follow-up. Do we need a reformation, and how would you like to lead it?
Do we need a reformation? I think we need the liberal church to get some spine and stand up. And I think that I think we have to stop giving these people religious legitimacy and start denouncing them for the messages of hate that they wrap in the American flag and the Christian gospel. Right? Where does the Catholic Church fall in that? That's a really interesting question, because I would go to these events, and this, of course, I think is endemic of what's happened in the movement. And you would see Catholic priests from Priests for Life and uniformed members of the Salvation Army and charismatics and Baptists all together in the same room. Now, fundamentalists, many fundamentalists traditionally look at charismatics as Satan worshipers because they speak in tongues. I mean, the doctrinal disputes are not small. The anti-Catholicism, along with the anti-Semitism, along with the racism, was, still runs deep within conservative Christian circles. But what they've managed to do is unite these groups around this project of creating a Christian America, so that these doctrinal or schismatic differences remain. But for now, they've been put on hold. Certainly, if they ever took power, if these radical dominionists took power, I don't think they'd have much time for the Catholic Church. Even when I took that seminar with D. James Kennedy, he referred to the Catholic Church as a cult, privately in the room. So they've drawn these conservative elements of the Catholic Church, along with charismatics, along with Pentecostal, into the embrace of this movement to create a Christian America. But those differences remain. They remain virulent. They remain strong. And when you look at all radical movements, that's not uncommon. Go back and read the Russian Revolution. I mean, what happens is that once these forces achieve power, the most ruthless and the most vicious are the ones who rise up to the top. That's how Lenin got to where he was. And oftentimes they spend more time killing off their own than they do killing off anyone else, because it is that scramble for power. Crane Britton wrote a lot about this in a great book, The Anatomy of a Revolution. The Christian right in Iraq